Is Eligio Bishop a sociopath? This is the Novice Analyzer. The internet loves extremes, extreme personalities, extreme behaviors, extreme confidence, and chaos. And maybe that's why somebody like Eligio Bishop was almost inevitable on the social media era, kind of like Thanos. Because the more I researched this story, the less I saw just another internet personality, and the more I saw a man who rebuilt himself into a myth, a legend, a god. But underneath all that, I kept wondering, who was he before Nature Boy? Because I think that matters a lot. I used to watch content creators like King World who gave the backstory of who Eligio was before he became a cult leader, when he was sleeping on the floor in one room. Talked about his life before he lived in Atlanta. The origins of this said Nature Boy. I learned it all through that content creator, as well as many others where I pieced together the information. And according to those reportings and information, Eligio Bishop's early life was filled with much instability. He said he lived in foster care. He said he experienced racism from the bishops. He said he was incarcerated. He faced rejection. And in all that, in his upbringing and his formative years, I think that's where his identity was fragmented. And I want to be careful here because I'm not saying that trauma creates abusive people automatically, because it doesn't. But unresolved trauma mixed with charisma, ego, and influence, well, that combination can be very, very dangerous, especially online. Because social media gives wounded people something that previous generations never had. And that's the ability to reinvent themselves publicly in real time. And we saw that. Eligio, dealing with all that he dealt with in his life, he didn't have to be that. You can become anybody online, no matter what you've gone through, because who's going to go and look you up unless you become infamous like Eligio? You can escape your shame online. You don't have to be insecure. You can run from your insecurities. If you feel powerless, you could become powerful on the internet. And I think Nature Boy didn't just create a movement. I think he created a version of himself that was powerful enough to outrun the parts of himself that he did not like or want to face. Now, let me say this clearly before people try to twist my words. I am not diagnosing Eligio. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Hell, I'm not even a sociologist. I'm the Novice Analyzer. I'm analyzing publicly discussed behaviors and patterns from interviews that I've seen on content creators like King World and documentaries like Hulu. And I'm reviewing, the psychological dynamics surrounding this particular cult leader. Because honestly, whether or not somebody is clinically a sociopath or not, and I don't think that term is acceptable now. I think it's outdated. I think it's called antisocial personality disorder. But whether they are that or not, the damage of manipulation causes real harm regardless of the label. And I think people get too caught up in labels anyway. Sometimes, instead of focusing on the labels, we need to be studying the behavior. So let's talk about the behavior. One thing almost everybody says about Eligio is that he's charismatic. That word comes up all the time. Charismatic. And charisma is one of the most misunderstood forms of power in the world, because being charismatic is powerful. People assume that charisma means that somebody is good. No. Charisma simply means that somebody knows how to emotionally influence people. And you can influence them positively, or in Eligio Bishop's case, destructively. And what made Nature Boy so psychologically compelling online was that he understood this. He understood something deeply about human vulnerability. I said this in episode 1. He knew how to expose that part of people's desire and exploit that. Especially for people who feel unseen and they're just desperate to be chosen. These young, impressionable people who felt disconnected from the world and wanted to belong, because if you remember in the documentary, a lot of his members came from college. They dropped out of college. And going to college when you are young, that is a moment of transition, where you are trying to find your identity. Everything feels uncertain. Eligio made them feel powerful in a world where they felt powerless. And people are drawn, especially young college students, they were drawn towards certainty. And Nature Boy projected certainty constantly. Even when he contradicted himself. Even when things became chaotic. Even when his behavior was very alarming and concerning, he still projected certainty. And his confidence seduced people, especially in emotionally uncertain times. Think about the times when they were in different countries and, they were approached by the police, and, how he would stir up people's emotions to make things unclear so he can project that certainty onto them. That's why so many movements online are built around personalities instead of principles. It's about who you are and not what you say. Because people emotionally attach themselves to certainty, not the truth. Now here's where things get really dark for me psychologically. Because when I go back and I watch the clips and I read the interviews, I study the dynamics surrounding carbonation. I notice the pattern that exists in many coercive environments. Emotional instability becomes normalized. One moment he's validating them, the next humiliating them. For the women, he's giving them love in one moment, and then in the next moment, he's putting fear of them in them. Then, for the group, he's projecting community, love, family. And then the next, he gets online to publicly punish them. That emotional inconsistency confuses people. And confusion psychologically weakens people over time. That's the one reason manipulation can become so effective, especially when isolation is involved. Especially when identity becomes tied to the group. That's why he changed the name so much. Melanation, carbonation, the ethereals, all of that. That's their identity. That's the group. And this is where I think people on the outside misunderstand cult psychology. You think, I would never fall for that. That'll never be me. How could they be so stupid? But manipulation rarely starts extreme. Those people did not go to Eligio while he was beating on people. Not many of them. I don't think he got any new members once he started to get really extreme. He didn't start off that way. He didn't start that way. He didn't say, "Come to me, I am God." He only introduced himself as master teacher. He made them feel comfortable. He pulled on their heartstrings, made them feel like family. He pretended he loved them. Because that's how manipulation starts. It starts emotionally. It starts with somebody finally making you feel important, special, like the chosen ones. They are the elite. They came to convict the weak. Chosen. They felt spiritually elevated. Until the point where slowly but surely, they started to depend on him. That's why this story is so deeply connected to identity, especially Black identity. Nature Boy wasn't just selling spirituality. He was selling transformation. He was selling power, liberation, superiority. Because if you remember, he became very popular during COVID. He became very popular during the Black Lives Matter movement. People wanted to escape oppression. Ironically enough, they were escaping the oppression of America just to walk headfirst into his own sick and depraved world of oppression. That's what fascinates me. It's how some people can lead these movements but just end up recreating the same exact hierarchy and domination that they claim they reject. That contradiction is important, because some wounded men become obsessed with power after spending years of feeling powerless. That's what a lot of us as black men, we feel powerless in the world. And sometimes people can expose that and play on that and play into this awakening. And awakening sometimes get marketed as spiritual superiority. And what that actually is actually your ego seeking control. That's what I said in episode 2, that a lot of these black men online seem less interested in freedom and more interested in becoming the dominant figure that they believe that society denied them the opportunity to become. Just listen to them. Listen to the spiritual cues when they talk about the black man. Listen to the unconscious community when they talk about who the black man is supposed to be. It's just black supremacy. It's not healing, my brothers. It's not peace. It's pure unadulterated power. And social media amplifies that hunger, because online attention feels like importance. When you gain followers, you're gaining status. When you go viral, it feels like validation. And the more people you are able to control, then you got that success. You got the success and the control of the white man. That's what y'all say, right? And once audience began to emotionally feed onto somebody's ego constantly, reality can start distorting, especially when somebody challenges them. And I think that's what happened to Nature Boy towards the end of his journey. His reality started to become distorted. That's why he became the 3-God. People said, oh, he's just schizophrenic. I don't think he was schizophrenic at all. I think he just did not understand what was real and what was fake. When you live in a vacuum with nobody telling you no, you get what you want when you say it. Everybody says yes, 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 yes. That's dangerous. It does distort reality. That's why I think one of the most disturbing parts of this entire story is the gradual God complex behavior. At one point, Nature Boy, he just said he's God himself. And psychologically, that's some terrifying shit. Because one of the most dangerous moments in any manipulative environment is when the leader begins seeing themselves as spiritually above accountability. Once somebody believes that they are beyond criticism, every harmful action can be justified in their own mind. Because sociopaths live in their mind. And in their mind, that's where the truth is. How many times did Nature Boy tell people that we are all in his dream? We are all in his mind. So whatever he was doing on the outside of his mind is not real. Therefore, there are no consequences. You understand? It was justified. He had full control. His control became guidance. When he humiliated them, that was him teaching them. When he abused them, that was their awakening. And when he told them to separate yourself from your family, they Babylon, isolate yourself, that was protection. You protecting your mind, you protecting yourself from Babylon. and his followers, they became extensions of the leader's ego instead of individual human beings. That's dangerous. Very dangerous. But honestly, I don't think the internet understands yet how much social media accelerates these dynamics, because before social media, charismatic leaders weren't geographically limited. You only knew about them in the area where you lived, and the only time you found out about them is after they have been unalived or put in jail. And then their story was told. Now, all you got to do is click on one live stream, and these leaders can psychologically influence vulnerable people across the world instantaneously. And algorithms, they reward intensity. They reward it. The louder the personality, the more visible they are. The more controversial the behavior, the more attention they're going to generate. And attention online becomes currency and power. That's why I think this situation is bigger than Nature Boy himself. This is about a new era of digital influence humanity still doesn't fully understand. Because we built platforms that reward performance without understanding what happens when psychologically unstable and manipulative personalities learn how to master those systems. I think that society confuses visibility with legitimacy now. Just because we see somebody everywhere, automatically they are legit. And we give them our attention, we give them access, and even worse, we give them money. Because money gives power. If somebody has enough followers, people assume, oh, this person must know something. They must be important. If somebody doesn't have a lot of followers, oh, they're not legit. They have no leg to stand on. But if you speak confident enough, then people will assume you're intelligent. And that's the thing, Eligio. He was just confident. He wasn't intelligent. He wasn't a dummy, but he wasn't intelligent. He just spoke passionately. If somebody speaks passionately enough, people are going to say it's the truth. That's harmful, and that's dangerous, because confidence and wisdom are not the same thing, and charisma without accountability can destroy people emotionally. Look at the current and former members of Carbon Nation. Look at them. Internally, they are destroyed. I don't think any of them are over 30 right now. Maybe a few. But the ones that are under 30, they look old. They look old. And that's because of Eligio Bishop. Now here's the question I keep coming back to. Was Eligio Bishop always manipulative? Or did the years of instability, rejection, incarceration, and internet validation slowly create the version of him that the world came to know him as? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know, bro. And I think pretending certainty about somebody else's psychology from behind the screen is kind of irresponsible, so I won't do it. But what I do know is that this story reveals something deeply uncomfortable about internet culture. We are living in an era where wounded people can become leaders before they heal. That's scary. And when pain gains influence before accountability, other people are going to suffer, man. And maybe that's the real warning here. Not just Nature Boy himself, but how easily social media can transform charisma into control and attention into power. This is Novice Analyzer. And the deeper story is never just the person. It's the system that allowed them to become larger than life.